I would hope I would never have to make this video, but at the end of the day, we live in this country and we live in this timeline. So, it is what it is, basically. Let's talk about it really quick. So, it's happened. Okay. This morning, the Supreme Court decided to overrule
This meme is very real.
Roe versus Wade. They threw it out, 50-year-old ruling with multiple precedents set on the idea that human beings do have a right, a constitutional right, to be able to access an abortion at some point in time, minimum, during a pregnancy. The new conservative Supreme Court basically said, no, every other ruling on this was completely incorrect. And we're just going to throw this away. And it's now up to the states to be able to decide whether or not you're going to be able to access an abortion at all. Right. And we're not even talking about whether that means, if it's like a child pregnancy or a dangerous pregnancy or a deadly pregnancy. No matter what, depending on the state, it could be anything from completely banned. It could be a 12-year-old who got like assaulted and they got a baby put in them, and also it's an apoptic pregnancy where it gets stuck in the fallopian tube and if it's allowed to grow, the person dies. Ectopic pregnancy, thank you. It could be like that, and then the child dies. But in like some conservative states, they just think that it's much better that 12-year-old children die of painful assault pregnancies than for any sort of abortion to happen. That's just what we call in the business conservative family values. But if you live in, but I want to take a look at how this will actually affect the country. So where abortion is legal and where it loses protection without Roe. Okay, so it was overturned. And so the states in blue is where abortion is protected and also even expanded in a lot of these places. In the places in gray, it's not protected and it's not banned either. Yellow is where they could receive a ban. Orange is could soon ban nearly all. And this color here, the dark orange, is banned in nearly all. So here in Kentucky, we had a trigger law that was put in place in 2019 when the past governor was in office. And they passed a trigger law that basically said if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, then instantly in Kentucky we lose almost all access to abortion, but not in the sense of if it's like dangerous to the mom in like any like real way. If it can like pose like disability or like injury or death, then you can get an abortion. But besides that, they're perfectly happy with forcing children to give birth. That's just Republican family values, And so here is share of reproductive age women who live in these states, and slightly more women live in hostile states than they do protective states for like Roe. So this is going to affect a lot of different types of people, right? Let's not forget Amy Barrett thinking that people with wombs are just cattle. They have more and more children. Yeah. So yeah, trigger bans were something that were happening here. In these states, they had trigger bans. It's like after state action in these places and after 30 days here. Enforceable immediately is here in Kentucky, Louisiana, and South Dakota, right? There were pre-Roe bans in these states, but not all of these states are going to continue their bans and everything, right? So we don't have to go like too far into this, but just like, I want you to, if you are somebody who's worrying about something along these lines, I want you to take a look at these states and the laws in your states before you go any further. And not only the laws in your states, the laws around your states, because that's like vitally important. Okay. If you live in the gray, 22 is especially important because conservatives will be very eager to leverage this in the midterms. Yeah, so they're going to be very eager to leverage this in the midterms, right? And this is something that we knew of. We remember when the leak came out about it and we talked about it a little bit. I didn't give like my full analysis in that time, but since then and now coming up to here, we have a little bit more and we know a little bit more about what's going to happen and what that like really means. So this is very worrying, right? The thing is that like Roe was in place for an incredibly long amount of time, half a century, and it was even upheld with Casey and other rulings along those lines that protected it. The fact that this is overturned now is completely ridiculous. There's no point to it. The only reason why they're doing this now is because they have the political pressure to do so. And this is something that they've been planning for a long time. I don't know what other streamers or other like content creators or other people have been telling you, but this is not new. Okay. A lot of people will say this was happening. This basically like started when like Trump was in office. That's not true. Some people will even say a lot of this started when Obama was in office. That's not true either. It goes back way further than that, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit. But before we do that, I want to talk about the implications of this at the moment, okay? And so, it was written in the draft of this decision that Alito really wanted to do things like get rid of what he called phony rights. And what are phony rights, okay? Phony rights are things along the lines of the right to marry and the right to like decency and respect from discrimination due to like your identities, things along those lines that he calls phony rights, right? And so and things along and things as well as like contraception. And even though that didn't make it into the final draft, what's worrying is that obviously there are people on the Supreme Court who believe stuff like that. One of those people is Justice Thomas, who wrote a concurring view of the decision that the Supreme Court made that went even further than they did and said that he wants to reconsider, which means that he wants to overturn the right to contraception, same-sex marriage, and other things as well that they possibly want. Their goal is to rip back human rights to like the 19th century, basically, is their
This meme is very real.
Land of the free, baby. Yeah. Phony rights is autonomy over your own body. Yeah, phony rights is being able to do with your own body what you see fit. Phony rights is being able to love the people who you love. And mind you, there are even like lots of people, even in like the old slave states and like the deep south, a lot of those types of people 100% still believe in things like banning interracial marriage. They just can't do it because of things like the 1964 like Civil Rights Act, but he wants to be able to reconsider things along those lines to overturn them, right? And so this is dangerous. And the future is worrying. So like Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell, all of these types of cases. Remember, Obergefell is the case that is same-sex marriage. You have the right to be able to marry who you want, and the state cannot like stop you from doing things along those lines. They want to revoke rights along those lines, right? And they're perfectly fine curtailing human rights to humans. I mean, we saw in their recent Supreme Court ruling that in 100 miles from the border is where the Border Patrol can operate. And basically the Supreme Court said that the Constitution does not apply to people who are being like apprehended by Border Patrol within 100 miles of the border. So we have this nice little ring around the entire country that includes all of Connecticut, all of Hawaii, and a lot of other smaller states on the border, where basically the Constitution no longer applies to those types of people, even though this doesn't make any sense, since the Constitution was said that it applies to everybody on American soil, period. I guess like the conservatives, they just wanted to skip that part of the Constitution, right? That's just basically how it goes. Guess where most of the country lives? It is true, most of the country does live 100 miles from the border. That is true. That is factual. That is accurate. So it's kind of odd how. So basically, a decent amount of the country had their rights pulled from them. Okay. So like once again, this is a fight that's been going on for a very, very long time. I'm not sure if you knew this, but there are actually more anti-abortion pregnancy centers in the country than there are abortion clinics in the country. And that number is actually 3-1. So they've already been shutting down as many abortion clinics as possible and putting up as many pregnancy centers as possible. And the dangerous thing about these pregnancy centers, I would like to tell you now to let you understand like what's happening, is anti-abortion pregnancy centers are collecting troves of data that could be weaponized against women. So be very careful if you were ever going to think about going to any of these so-called pregnancy centers, because they're collecting medical data on you. And if anything happens, like you get accused of having a miscarriage or accused of leaving the state while you're having like a break in your mental cycle or something along those lines. A lot of conservatives and a lot of prosecutors can go to these types of pregnancy centers and clinics and collect that information from you to use against you in court. This is why I say, and a lot of other people are saying, if you're somebody who has like a menstrual cycle or like period cycle tracking app, to delete that at this very moment. You don't want to have that on you, because if it comes to the point where you're in a state where they're going to try to collect you for, they're going to try to prosecute you because they think that you may have had a miscarriage at some point in time, that they're going to collect this medical information from you. And the state already has a decent amount of medical information on you to use against you. So they'll be like, oh, so you said you just left the state to go visit family, huh? Very curious how you tweeted about how you said that you might be pregnant, and then you had a lap in your menstrual cycle, and then you left the state. Because in places like Texas, what they want to do, not only criminalize you having an abortion in the state, they want to criminalize you from leaving the state to get an abortion, and also criminalize anybody who helps you leave the state to get an abortion in places like these. So these these pregnancy centers, which basically tells children, young women, disabled people who are pregnant, who basically tell them, hey, you don't need a pregnancy. You don't need like an abortion. There's no reason for an abortion. We'll help you. We'll help you. What they do basically is that they guilt trip you into thinking that it's completely unethical and horrible for you to have an abortion, and you're going to be a great parent. And then they do things like they give you like a week's worth of diapers and a week's worth of like formula, and they want to like train you how to be like a good parent for the first like year. But the second the baby's born, guess what? It's called a pregnancy center, not a child rearing center. So the second that you have the baby, you're gone. They're gone. They're gone. Poof, just like that. Doesn't matter that children born to poor families have a higher likelihood of dying. No, doesn't matter that this is going to disproportionately harm poor families and people of color who are going to be saddled with all of this debt and who aren't ready to have children. No, doesn't matter that the children who are born to families who didn't want them in the first place often have horrible outcomes compared to parents who are like ready and able to take care of them. No, because this isn't about making sure that children are taken care of. This is making sure that people are punished for doing things that the state deems uncouth and in some cases what they believe is like unholy, right? And they've been doing attacks on abortion clinics for as long as Roe's been in place. And I'm not talking about attacks in the sense of like political attacks or legislation attacks. I mean actual physical attacks. I mean, you can just take a look at this. Assaults against abortion clinic patients rose 128% in 2021. Assault and battery went up 69%. Nice. Vandalism went up 43%. Suspicious packages went up 44%. So they basically faked sending bombs. Stalking went up 24%. Invasions up 9%. Burglary 5%. Blockages are up 9%, and bomb threats are up 4% as well. This is not like a small thing. What you're going to hear is that a lot of conservatives say, like, they're fear mongering right now, especially on Fox News, about the night of rage or like the night of terror. Be careful, because these spooky, scary lefties who don't know how to possibly understand how to engage in politics without resorting to violence are going to engage in a night of terror against their political enemies. Dude, what we shouldn't be worrying about is some like mythical night of terror. What we should be talking about are the days and nights of terror that Republicans have been waging against this country for 50 years and even longer than that. Conservatives, when they come, they bring terror with them. And when I say terror, I don't mean just simply attacks. I mean actual terrorism, right? Because this is something that they've been planning for a while through legislation, through the judicial branch, and through physical attacks as well. They are fighting on all branches to take for this moment today to happen for a very long time. Now, I want to show you something because I said that they've been doing this for a while. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to prove it to you. So, here's this very interesting article that was written not too long ago, and it was called How the Republican Party Took Over the Supreme Court, the 50-year effort to advance a conservative legal agenda. A lot of people these days have been saying things along the lines of this is something that's incredibly new from the Republicans. And honestly, I've been saying something along those lines, and I'm going to be changing my tone, and I'm going to be backtracking there a little bit. Basically, is that a lot of people are saying, like, since like Cheney was in office and like Mitch McConnell and things along those lines, those guys have been working fastidiously to roll back human rights in this country for a long time. And it basically started then when the Republicans started to radicalize, but that's not true. They've been radicalizing for a long time for a very concerted effort for this like moment today. Okay, so there have been people's entire lives that they've been working for this entire moment. And the very curious thing is that some of those people who have been working their entire lives to roll back human rights in this country are sitting on the Supreme Court at this very moment. We can talk about this a little bit. So I highlighted a couple of things that I think would be interesting to you guys. All right. So even back in like 1969, followed by 3 Nixon appointees, fundamentally altered the role of the court and began to roll back the progress made at the mid-century, a researcher said. And so basically, probably even before Nixon, this goes back to even before Nixon. So this is what we're talking about. But Nixon is where the court really took a turn, okay? Because Nixon and Reagan and those people came after the Democrats. What was it? 40-year rule. The Democrats had a 40-year rule over the executive branch and the judicial branch and the legislative branch for a long time, ever since, FDR, and things along those lines. But like leaving that, once the Republicans were able to start to get power again, they start to leverage that to roll back those human rights, roll back those roll back that economic progress that we were on, and fundamentally altered the timeline that we were on and the trajectory of this country forever for a more far-right, totalitarian, some people are using the word fascist, rule in this country, which is incredibly dangerous. It started even all the way back then. The court ever since has been the Nixon court. The justices in this new Republican-dominated court have blessed law enforcement efforts to ratchet up the punishment of criminals, thereby driving mass incarceration. The court has limited rights of the poor to welfare payments and blessed inequalities in public school funding. In campaign finance, the justices have cheered on efforts by wealthy individuals and firms to use their money to dominate election environments, even while making it more difficult for those without such riches to participate in the political process. Workers have seen their rights diminished by a series of decisions upholding arbitration agreements and rejecting class action treatment of cases alleging widespread harms. Customers have watched as their court very nearly abolished the same rights by upholding waivers to the rights of bringing class action lawsuits altogether. So the Nixon court was even working to dismantle class action lawsuits, period. Not just class action lawsuits by some people for some reasons. They were going to completely outlaw and say class action lawsuits are unconstitutional, period. That's how insane conservatives are. The case best symbolizes the 50 years of adjudication is not one of the poverty cases of the 1960s and 70s in which Cohen focuses his attention, but rather the Bush v. Gore, in which the court halted the vote and recount of Florida during the disputed presidential election of 2020 and swung the election to Republican candidate Bush, as Cohen notes. The decision aggressively holding was out of step with the position of the Republican-appointed judges had adopted for a generation. The majority insisted that its holding was limited to the present circumstances and not relevant to the decision of other cases. That's really convenient. So basically what they're saying is that this court case, we're only writing this court case for our political ends and goals. And so if sometime in the future people want to say that they're going to do this to do it like against us, just so you know, this court case doesn't support that. Okay, it's only for us. Sorry. Which is also very insane. The confirmation of Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh to the court in the fall of 2018 was a culmination of today's partisan court. So if you didn't know, actually, Breyer, not Breyer, what's his name? Fuck. Wait, I want to say, wait, 1 second. Gorsuch, Breyer, and Kavanaugh all worked on, all of these people worked as lawyers in 2000 on the ground to lobby the Supreme Court to halt the vote and get Bush in office. So when a lot of people say that this is something that's been in office for that's been in the process for a very long time, this is what we mean. So what happened is that they were working to overturn the election, basically, in Florida back in 2000 to give it to Bush. And so they gave bonuses and they gave kickbacks to those justices who helped them in that, those justices, those attorneys, those lawyers who helped the Republicans in that effort, right? And so Kavanaugh and other justices and other justices today, back in 2001 to 2003 and the early 2000s of the Bush era to the Trump era, were all given kickbacks basically for the hard work that they did to make sure that Bush was put into office. So Kavanaugh specifically talked to the Supreme Court to get to convince them to stop the voting there. And then he was added to Bush's cabinet, actually. Let me show you this. Kavanaugh went on from the Clinton investigation to work as a GOP lawyer in the Florida election recount dispute in 2000. Victorious there, he took a position in the White House counsel office under Bush, where he gave special attention to the crucial party task of filling the courts with Republican nominees. When he married a longtime Bush aide, Kavanaugh entered the Bush family inner circle. He became staff secretary to the president in 2003. And then all conservatives ever since then, even if they didn't know exactly of the plan that the Republicans have been working on, they helped push the plan forward. And so when Donald Trump came into office, do you think Donald Trump knew anything about this? No. He was fed a list of Supreme Court justice nominees, and that list was filled with a bunch of hard right conservatives that had helped the Republicans push their incredibly anti-human rights agenda for a long time. Kavanaugh was on the list. Breyer was on the list. Kennedy was on the list. Gorsuch was on the list. These types of people who were lackeys of the Republicans before have been given the most amount of power that you could possibly have in the country outside of holding the nuclear football, right? And so with all of that being said, I would like to tell you and talk about something super interesting to me, okay? Is because we feel like there's not much that we can do about this. Do you believe that if the Republicans felt the same way that you may at this very moment, that we'd be in this position right now? Do you think if once the Supreme Court voted to enshrine Roe v. Wade and abortion protections in the Constitution back 50 years ago, that they just gave up? Do you think that we would be in this position today? The answer, obviously, is no. We wouldn't be in this position today. Absolutely not. And a lot of people you're going to see come out of the woodwork and saying that voting doesn't do anything, voting doesn't matter. If voting doesn't do anything and voting doesn't matter, how did the Republicans get everything that they wanted through voting? A lot of people would say, if voting really did anything, then we wouldn't be allowed to do it. Well, for one, they would have to fundamentally change the Constitution to do that. And there aren't enough people to want to do that. And also the Republicans are trying to do the most that they can to stop people from voting. Do we forget gerrymandering? Do we forget the 2020 election where Donald Trump literally wanted to take the rights of people away? He literally wanted to steal the election. If voting didn't matter, then why would they go through all of this effort? Why would they go through a 50-year-long process to instill their own political agenda into place? Why? The answer is not because it doesn't work and it's a waste of time. The answer is because it does work and it's not a waste of time whatsoever. The reason why they're fighting to make sure that you have a more difficult time to vote is because they know that voting is powerful. Now, is voting everything? No. And I don't want to stick on voting for very long. I really don't. What do you think of Vosh saying that the GOP is a death cult because of evangelical Christianity? I think it's true. I think they are a death cult, 100%. I remember the governor of Mississippi came out, or was it Arkansas? I forget which one. I think it was probably Mississippi. The governor of Mississippi during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic came out and said that we're not doing any lockdowns. We're not afraid to die because we pray. And so if we die, we die, but we're not doing any lockdowns because we pray hard enough. And so yeah, that is actually that is actually genuinely a they are a death cult, 100%. They are 100% a death cult. So one thing that I want to tell you is that while we should not be not voting, we should understand the limitations of voting, right? The type of people who like bemoan the usefulness of voting, they're only part right. And the part that they're right about is that voting doesn't do everything, and voting isn't going to save the world, and voting isn't going to give you all of your rights back and keep them in place. That's not going to happen. We have to do actions to make sure that that happens, and actions on the ground. Okay. And this is why I didn't name it this segment, at the beginning, but this is why I'm going to be basically calling this segment How to Save the World. Okay. This segment, I want it less to be about talking about how bad the Republicans are or whatever, or how unuseful the Democrats are. I want to talk about you. Okay. Because that's who's important here. You, the person right there. And if you don't think I'm talking to you, fuck you. I am, dumbass. This is about you. Okay. And how you can save the world, because nobody else is going to do it for you. You are important, okay? All of you are important, vitally important. And here's the reason why. Is because individuals together make big actions. The Republicans got where they are today because of small actions and people on the ground working together and working for a common goal, okay? And so they've been working to put this together since Nixon, since Roe v. Wade was even codified. And all of that time, every single year, every day of every single year, for 50 years, they worked for this moment today. And there are people who felt like they were going to give up, and there are people who didn't want to do anything, but there are many who still pushed forward, and you know what? They succeeded. Honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm impressed. This is work that's taken longer than my lifetime, right? Actually, over double my lifetime that this has been in the process of being made. That's an incredibly dedicated, that's an incredibly dedicated political ideology right there. That's incredibly dedicated. And so where's your dedication? What are you doing? It's one thing to be mad. Like we can all do things like rolling out of bed, checking Twitter, seeing that your rights have been taken away, typing Supreme Court, more like Supreme Cringe, farming likes and base on in your replies, putting your phone down, and then going to bed again. Okay, you can do that if you want. That's what I did earlier today. But is that really going to do anything? Be honest, is it? The answer is no. Okay, and so we have to be able to work and do what they did and more and better to be able to get your rights back, okay? They're basically in lockstep with their goals. There's a reason why the conservatives have started to latch on to, radical evangelical Christianity, because they're motivated. They're motivated. They're a motivated voter base. They vote more than you. They work harder than you. They go to more city councils than you. They talk to more representatives than you. They protest more than you. They get angrier than you. And they do more than you. And they're more powerful than you. Why? Because of all of the other things that I mentioned, not just because of who they are. They're more politically active than you. They care more about, do you think that it's okay that these people care more about taking your rights away than you care about keeping your rights? You can get all as mad as you want, and you can get as sad as you want. If you don't do anything about it, you're just pissing and shitting into the wind, and you're not doing literally anything to make your life or people's lives any better. You're not getting mad for any good reason. You're just mad just to be mad. If you're not going to do anything, I don't know why the fuck you're here. I don't know why you're listening to this. I don't know why you're not just like burying your head into a pillow and just crying yourself to sleep every day. At the very, if you're not going to do anything, okay, don't get in the way of anybody else. Don't try and take the wind out of their sails when trying to fix this country and trying to fix this planet and making sure that we instill and push for more human rights, okay? You can just leave now. I don't want you here. Now, for all the people who are still here, yeah, it should make you angry that I said that. That I said that they care more about taking away your rights than you care about keeping your rights. If you haven't spent any time doing the things that I said in the case of pushing to make sure that your representatives know how like angry you are and like how much that you care. If you haven't done any like community organizing, if you haven't gone to like city councils, if you haven't gone to like school board meetings, if you haven't gone to any of these things, if you haven't done this or that, if you like don't typically vote, then yeah, they care more about taking away your rights than you care about keeping yours. Sorry, that's the truth. And if that makes you feel like really upset because it's Pride Month, okay, fuck you. Sorry, cry about it. And then when you're done crying, come back and then be a part of the community to make this world a better place. All right? Because I want you to have rights. I'm not here to like collect a paycheck and then like leave. I'm here to make sure that the people who I care about, who I think, who I'm going to say are God's children, make sure that they have the rights that are endowed to them for being human beings. I'm upset about that. Good. It's Pride Month. If you're like a queer person listening to this right now and you have a pit in your stomach when you heard that Clarence Thomas is looking to overturn Obergefell, if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or like a partner who you love, who you know Republicans would say that real. Who would be more than happy to roll back your rights and make sure that you not only cannot marry who you love, but also it's criminalized to marry who you love, and that didn't kick you into wanting to like look into like being a part of a protest or being a part of a community or going to do some community organizing or all those things, then yeah, you care less about your rights than people like Mitch McConnell care about taking them away from you. And I don't think they care that much, if I'm going to be very honest with you. The only reason that they're really doing this, because a lot of them aren't even that really religious. The main reason they're doing it is to appeal to their evangelical base to get for more blood, so they keep voting for them because they're so active politically.
This meme is very real.
They work incredibly hard and they're incredibly angry. And so why shouldn't you? You should be more angry. You're the one who's getting more hurt than they are. Don't allow them to have more power over you. I don't think they should have any power over you.
This meme is very real.
I get angry.
This meme is very
You guys
real.
don't see it very often, but I get pretty angry.
This meme is very real.
And the anger that I feel, personally, I am religious. We talk about it every now and again. And I know a lot of people, like this in particular, has kicked off their new atheism arc. And I can completely understand that from like everything that they've seen. But like once again, personally, I am religious. This meme is very real. And the family that I grew up in and the churches that I grew up in, they're very progressive.
Is very real.
And like the reading of the Bible that we did goes incredibly contrary to this. A very interesting thing is that in the Bible, actually, you may not know this from how a lot of evangelicals act, but anger is actually sinful in the Bible. It is not good. You remember, like some of you remember the whole like turn the other cheek thing. Like if your enemy hits you, turn the other cheek. That's a big Bible thing. Not allow them to just get angry. Wrath, it is a sin, 100%. I remember. A very interesting thing is that there's only one form of anger in the Bible that's okay, and that is like righteous indignation. Okay, I feel like I'm holding up the staff. This is a modern day pole. Modern day staff.
This meme is very real.
I didn't believe in magic until my dog turned into a snake. And I'm like, and I'm holding this and I'm like, let my people go. I'm not one of you in the sense of like, I'm not like a gay, but let my people go.
This meme is very real.
But I get angry. I say it a lot of the time because I see a lot of you guys, and I know a lot of you all are young. And some of you are older. I know a lot of you don't have like too much money or like too much time or too much energy because you've been like beaten down by like just society, by the way this country works and by like the state of the
This
world.
meme is very
But
real.
I've talked about it before, but I want to reinstate it here is that I
This meme
don't
is very
want
real.
any of you to be sad. Okay. I think if you leave this stream today
This
and
meme
you
is very
are
real.
just sad, then I have failed at my job. Okay. A lot of people like I think sometimes my job is being just like a shitty content creator to like, you know, meme around and talk about some political things at the moment. But I've taken my like role in your lives more seriously over the last like 2 years really. And in this moment in time,
This
I
meme
want
is
to
very
say that
real.
if you leave here and you're just sad, then yes, I failed.
meme is very
because
real.
I don't want you to be sad. Okay. This shouldn't be a sad moment. When you heard that the Supreme Court was overturning Roe v. Wade, when you heard that they want to go after things like Obergefell, when you heard that they want to do things like tear down the walls between church and state, when you hear things like they want to do things like limiting things like contraception, when they want to take away human rights, I don't want you to be sad. Sad is not like what you should be feeling. You should be feeling angry. You should be mad. Okay. Do you think that like Republicans got to where they are at this moment in time by being sad? Do you think that they just like moped around and got depressed and told people not to vote or not to do anything? Don't go out and protest. Don't go out and do anything. I don't know, just like read Das Kapital again and then sit on Twitter, and when you see like bad things happening, just say I told you so, and then you log off and then do it again tomorrow. Do you think that's what they told people when they saw that things weren't going their way in this country? No. Democrats controlled all three the Democrats controlled all three branches of government for 40 years. 40 years of Democratic rule in the 1900s. 40 years. And did the Republicans give up? No. We are not experiencing a 40-year Republican rule right now. I'm not even sure if we're going to be in like a 40 years of the Senate. 40 years of the Supreme Court being in Republican rule. I'm not even sure of that. And if they were able to do that back then and then come back even angrier and more violent than ever, I'm not saying that you need to get violent, but I'm saying that you need to be angry. You need to be mad. There's no reason for you to not be upset. It's very important that you are. Because anger and fear are some of the strongest emotions that you can feel. And if you can instill that in other people, you know what that does? A lot of people will say this is fear mongering. This is not fear mongering. You know what this is? This is simply self-preservation. And if you can't work yourself into actual action on the ground with your 2 feet for your own life, for your own self-preservation, then no amount of like doom saying and no amount of like video essays and no amount of like wild rants that I could do or anybody else could do is going to convince you to do anything. If this moment right here doesn't convince you that you need to actually get involved in politics, then I'm not sure if there's anything that I can say really, because you should be activated here. I want this to be a wake-up call that 50 years of Republican work has led to this moment. It won't take 50 years if we work hard enough to undo it. And so if that's the case, then I don't want you to be sad. If you need, I'm not saying to like just straight up just bottle up all your emotions. If you are sad, I want you to let that out. It like join the Discord. We're going to be like opening up the Discords very soon in full. Unfortunately, there were some crazy shit going on and people were attacking pro LGBT Discord, so we had to shut down the links at the moment, but it's going to be opening back up soon. Talk to some people if you need it. If you don't have friends near you or people who you can talk to, there are lots of people who would love to talk about how you're feeling. Don't just sit on it, but don't dwell on it, and don't wallow in it. Don't wallow in sadness. I want you to be able to feel that sadness and then turn that into anger, and don't use that anger to do nothing. I want you to use that anger and make the world a better place. And this is how you save the world. And I don't want you to worry about like the federal level, even if that means like the Senate. I want you to worry about things like even closer to where you are, because the smaller in the scale that you get, the more work and the more you'll see the value of you as a human being be emulated in the amount of good that you can do in the world, because you get more and more extracted the higher and higher and higher you go, but you can do a lot in your local community to make the world a better place. And if a bunch of people work in their communities, those communities can work together and then work on like bigger, just full state levels, and state levels can then work on federal levels, and then we can work again to do that, right? But it's going to take small steps, even things that you may think that aren't too like crazy, like TPUSA does a lot of work. Some people forget, and we like, skipped by it just a tiny bit. But that one guy who was like, you remember the story that we talked about with Nick Fuentes and like that boy that he groomed to like live in his basement in Chicago? Remember that story? So that boy that he groomed to live in his basement in Chicago, that guy joined his like local TSA, and then that TSA got so big in the Midwest, it became the biggest TPUSA in the Midwest, and that guy got to meet Donald Trump. That guy went to Mar-a-Lago, okay? So if that's the type of work that can get you to like those types of people, and remember, even like Chris Smalls, who worked even in his like small area, now he's working with much larger people like around the country.
Very real.
Small actions. Yeah, he did get to meet his God.
This meme is very real.
Small actions can turn into big changes. So, does this mean don't vote? No. Shut the fuck up, dumbass. You should be voting still. There's no reason for you not to. And even in voting for even better candidates is even better, right? But the Democrats, they aren't like your friends. They're just much better than the alternative. And much better than the alternative is incredibly good at this point in time in the world that we're living in. Republicans are in the midst of a massive civil war, okay? They're in the midst of a huge, massive civil war. Remember, Georgia has 2 Democratic senators. Arizona has 2 Democratic senators. That hasn't happened in 30 or 50 years, if I remember correctly, for each state, like respectively.
This meme is very real.
And all of that is because of they're having a massive civil war between like the Trump wing and the more like moderate Republican wing and the literal Nazi wing of their party. And they're being pulled in many different directions. They're in a place they can be very vulnerable, and you can attack them very well by just saying the stuff that they repeat and their party repeats. We're going to be talking later in the stream about what Texas is doing at the moment and like the log cabin Republicans. But I want you to be.
This meme is very real.
Activated. When I went to up to Clarksville, Indiana to help the union organization, I went to go network a little bit with people there. I got to meet and network with a tenant union member and a tenant union somebody who works with tenant unions to make sure that they have like legal rights and everything. I went to collaborate with a little socialist party that's there. I went to network with the DSA party in it's a little place, like if you're not from the area, then this is going to sound weird to you, but it's called Kentuckiana. So it's like northern Kentucky and southern Indiana. So they just call it Kentuckiana, really. And it's like that area, and then like the tri-state area of Kentucky, Indiana, and Illinois. Wait, no, my bad. Illinois is to the west of Indiana. I'm thinking of Ohio. My bad. Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky, like the tri-state area there. They work there a little bit. Cincinnati works in northern Kentucky as well, right? So, why sharks say the same things 3 times? Because you bitches don't listen. That's why I say the same things 3 times, okay? This is why I'll say it 4 times, okay? To like actually put it in your head. Because if you just say it once, a lot of the times people just forget it. Because a lot of you don't listen. I want you to listen. I want you to be angry. Honestly. Like we'll look at Republicans and they'll say shit like over and over and over and over and over again. You can like listen to, and this is like the same thing. Okay, here you can listen to a Tucker Carlson bit. I could basically like reiterate a Tucker Carlson bit like verbatim to you. You know why? Because he says the same shit over and over again. And why does he do it? Because it works. It does. When it becomes orthodoxy, when it becomes like second nature to you, that's when you'll start to internalize it. And that's when you'll start to do something about it. If it's just something that you hear every now and again, then it's easy to kind of forget. It's easy to pretend like things are going to just get better by just wishing that it will. It won't. You need to be involved in it. You need to do it. Yes, and even the one joke thing. Remember during the 2020 election cycle when we covered Bernie Sanders speaking and he was so repetitive. You remember that? Like every single Bernie speech was the same exact Bernie speech. You hear one Bernie speech, you've heard all Bernie speeches, basically. He says the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. I could like reiterate a Bernie speech to you. The repetition is important for you to be learning. It really is. And to be able to convey that to other people. You need a message to convey to other people to get them to understand. The top 1%, you know? It's important. It really is. Okay. And so I hope that you're activated. If you need more time to, process your feelings and emotions, please take that time. We don't want anybody who's like really emotionally unstable or anything to be a part of any like movement. Not because fuck you, but because it's important that you're in a good state of mind for these types of things. But I want you to be mad. Okay. And so if you would like to get involved in your area, what can you do? It's one thing to say this. Now, what can you do?
This meme is very real.
One thing that you can do is you can go on Facebook. You can type in things like socialist organizations in my area. You can type in things like abortion, like pro-abortion protests, like in my area. You can type in things
this
like
meme is very real.
Human rights advocacy in my area, tenant advocacy in my area, environmental advocacy in my area, things along those lines. And you can look up that type of stuff you can help these people. Now, there's some other stuff that we could like possibly talk about. There's some sort of like, abortion underground railroads to be able to get people out of anti-abortion states when they need it and get them to pro-abortion states so they can get the healthcare that they need, especially if their life is on the line and they're in states that don't care about the mother dying. Those are possible. I'm not going to be directing you to any of those because they definitely don't exist, especially if anybody who is like a Republican representative or or somebody who is looking to out those types of people are around. They don't exist. They're not real. Also, this is a big thing as well. We won't go back. 49 years of constitutional rights and abortion for abortion in this country was overturned, but they cannot control us. Our bodies are our own. And so we won't go back as well. It's wewon'tgoback.com. No apostrophe or anything. This is where you can get involved as well. They're setting up a lot of marches in around the country and a lot of advocacy around the country. And once again, during these protests, I don't want you to just go to these protests, like take a couple pictures and go home. While you're there at these protests, organize with the people there. Okay. Network. I know it's hard to talk to people. I know it's very difficult, but even at least over here and ask questions like, do you guys have a Facebook? And then when you get involved with those people are involved with other people. And then you can very easily find advocacy groups and grassroots organization in your area that can do things like mutual aid, that can do things like political advocacy, that can do things like going to city board meetings, that can do things like going to school board meetings, that can actually start to get change done around your community and around the country. And this is how you guys individually can save the world. Okay. And without you working, I don't think anybody really is. You can't rely on somebody else to do the work for you. You can't rely on, don't do this sort of like political bystander effect that you think, oh man, this sucks that I'm one of those gay homosexuals who loves my boyfriend and I was thinking about marrying him one day, but Clarence Thomas said that he's going to be overturning Obergefell. So hopefully some other person's going to stand up and make sure that I have my rights. Shut up, dumbass. You dumb piece of shit. You fucking idiot. How well did that work out for other minorities throughout time? To be like, well, I mean, somebody else will keep my rights for me. No, they won't, bitch. What are you talking about? They'll easily take them from you if you don't do anything about it. So, do something about it. At the end of the day, I want to leave you with this, okay? As sad as it is, as difficult as it is, as worrisome as it is,
This meme
I
is
want you
very
to
real.
remember that we are living in an incredibly turbulent time in our world, in our country, in our communities, and in our hearts. And this is going to be remembered for as long as people are around. You are living through history being made. The actions that you can take from now and moving on into the future will be things that can be mentioned, referenced, or directly written about in history books for people moving into the future. And what's going to happen today dictates a lot about what's going to happen tomorrow and the days after that. You are living through history. So be a part of it. Be a part of what makes it better. Be a part of the movement in this country that changes the course of it. And with this being one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful nation on the world, a change in our course is a change in the course of the entire planet. You are living through history. Be a part of it.